Yeah, it's an incredibly horrible story that has come to light. And, that reaction that you're talking about there, Izak, is exactly the reaction that we wanted to get from the magistrate in the matter. But unfortunately, the state failed to ensure that that video evidence was admitted to the record and that it was able for the magistrate to actually view it. So, the public's reaction to this is the appropriate reaction. It's one of disgust, it's one of anger, it's one of disappointment, knowing that ultimately the perpetrator of these very violent acts against a woman walked away with a mere 20,000 rand fine. And we believe that this lies with the prosecutor in the particular matter. So on the morning that the matter was supposed to proceed, it was set down for trial. The prosecutor didn't even greet Nicoleen. I mean, this is the woman for whose rights he was seemingly fighting for in this particular court, to hold somebody accountable. He didn't even greet her. When it came to the sentencing argument, it was, of course, mitigation of sentence first. The defense counsel got up and he made submissions to the effect that his client shows remorse. Further, that his client is undergoing psychological treatment for his anger issues. But no evidence to this effect was presented to the court. And this wasn't challenged by the prosecutor. So the court accepted, without a single report from a psychologist, from any expert, that this accused is going for counseling. That's the one aspect. The other is, when it came to the admission of the video evidence, the state got up and said they'd like to bring this application. The defense simply said, we object. We question the authenticity of the record, or of these videos rather, how they were collected and handled and so on, and how they ended up to this point. The state, the prosecutor, effectively simply rolled over and said, well, we're not going to present any evidence to prove the authenticity, and we'll accept whatever ruling the court makes. And that's exactly what the magistrate did. He said, until such time that until the state presents anything to prove the authenticity, he's not going to admit it to the record. The state then simply moved on to presenting a medical report and arguing from the bar why the assault was so bad and that the accused should receive a just punishment. But that's effectively it wasn't a very strong case from the state side. Unfortunately, as we understand it, and this is the advice I've taken from Advocate Nell, is that this matter can't be appealed. There's very limited scope for the state to appeal in any matter. And it comes down to whether or not there was an error in law. Now, in this particular case, there was no error in law. This was simply a poor case presented by the state in aggravation of sentence. So there are, in fact, no grounds for the state to further appeal this. Now, if Nicoleen we haven't taken instruction, but if anybody wants to file a complaint against the prosecutor, there certainly are those avenues to take. But we have not received any instructions in that regard. So over the weekend, Sunday newspapers did some digging into Jaco Swart, and they managed to establish that even just days before he was to go and plead guilty for this assault, he had been involved in 2 separate incidents in Cape Town where cases of assault were opened up against him. I'm not too sure of the status of those at this stage, but that's what happened. What this sentence means for Jaco Swart is, assuming he does get arrested on another charge, for purposes of bail, he'd have to declare his prior convictions. So you'd have to state that would make his bail application a little bit more difficult. But if he is ever convicted of assault, the suspended sentence he received in the matter involving his wife would immediately be lifted, and the 3-year sentence would then be imposed, which would be on top of whatever he gets sentenced for in the matter, the new matter he gets found guilty of. We haven't taken any further instructions from Nicoleen in this regard. Of course, if anybody requires the support of AfriForum's private prosecution unit, they should, of course, send us an email, onsvervolg@afriforum.co.za, and we'll consider all those matters. In this particular matter, we had a watching brief. The state had the matter was struck off the roll or was withdrawn, and we got involved, made representations to the Director of Public Prosecution, and it was re-enrolled, and we had a watching brief on behalf of Nicoleen Swart. People can certainly approach us if there are other instances where there's been failures by the state to pursue a matter. We'll, of course, have to assess it on the facts and see whether there is scope for our assistance. But it is a concern. I mean, this is not the first case that you would have heard of where criticism has been leveled against the NPA for a handling of a gender-based violence matter. So, where there is scope for us to intervene and to provide guidance and assistance to a complainant, we certainly will. But people must come forward then, send us those emails, and we will assess what evidence is available.